Good afternoon. Going to call this workshop part of the council meeting together. All members of council are present with the exception of Ryan Richard, who is probably on his way from work. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to David Hooper from the RFATS community in Rock Hill, who's going to step to the microphone and he's going to tell us about the demand response transit service proposal. David Hooper.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council.
Good evening.
Let me go ahead and get myself oriented here. Now, for some, this will be a little bit of a refresher. I was before you, I think, December of 2015, if memory serves, where we had talked about a recently completed transit study where we looked at the entire RFATS region and looked at existing services and what additions to our transit services might be warranted. We kind of go through, for those who may be less familiar with the RFATS area, here's a map of RFATS. You can see it is a multi-county planning area that includes York County all the way out to 274 and a little beyond, and then includes the panhandle of Lancaster County. It serves a planning area population of a little over 200,000. And kind of go through. Now that regional transit study I mentioned a moment ago was an exhaustive search, kind of looking at all the dynamics that feed into what make for a successful transit system. So let me kind of give you a brief overview of what was covered during that study. And in two particular areas I'd like to focus on. One is kind of a summary of existing transit services. What's out there now? And what you see is you've got an express bus route right there did I turn that off? There we go. Right there in the center on I-77, you've got the CATS 82X that starts there in Rock Hill and runs up to Baxter and goes all the way up to Carowinds and then makes its way under the Charlotte Transportation Center. And this runs Monday through Friday during the morning and evening peak periods. And then what you see all across the screen is a series of demand response services. Essentially, you've got demand response on the western side of York County. You see York County Access there in the rural service. You've got demand response available in the Rock Hill urbanized area. That's that orange area there in the center. You've got demand response in the Panhandle. You see it up there on the map as LARS, the Lancaster Area Ride Service. And then north of the river, you see that circle. That is the one place within the RFATS area where there is no transit service available. I'm going to kind of go forward one and kind of look at service area characteristics, and I'll come back to why there's no service in that one area. Now, a couple of things we focused on in the study was two key areas: transit potential and transit need. Transit potential is looking at those physical characteristics within a planning area that will influence whether a transit service can be successful. And a couple of those up there: population density, employment density, where are your major employers, kind of get a sense of where people are living and where they're going for their employment. You look at your location of activity centers, and then of course you look at the supporting infrastructure that often is associated with a successful transit system. Now, to give you kind of a visual illustration of that, I know this is a little bit hard to see, but if you go to that top circle, you'll see some highlighted areas just south of 160 near Baxter. It's where you've got higher than average concentrations. You also see that a little higher there on Gold Hill Road, and then you see it higher up in the Highway 51 area. You see a higher concentration again. But you don't see those highlighted designations throughout the area. They're dispersed across that area. And so that makes the provision of transit a little more challenging and requires a flexible approach. I'm going to go forward to transit need. This is a focus on certain population subgroups within an area that have a greater propensity to use transit. And you've got, of course, low-income households, those who are a little older, those households with no vehicles, and of course those with special needs. Now, when we mapped out transit need in the area, this is what you see. You see more of a concentration here, closer to I-77, and you see it a little bit east, going toward Fort Mill. You see it down in the Rock Hill urbanized area, and you don't see it as strongly here in Tega Cay. Now let me kind of go forward and look at what kind of recommendations or options came out of this study. And one of the things that we were told is that you don't quite have the density and the other characteristics I had referenced earlier that would make for an immediate initiation of a fixed route service. In the absence of any service, to jump right into a fixed route would be a little bit ahead of where we're at. Although longer term, you'll see a little lower on the slide, they did say that a circulator along the 160 corridor certainly looks very likely. We're just not there yet. And they recommended the initiation of a demand response service. This is often referred to as dial-a-ride. And you know, this is a flexible approach. It's curb-to-curb service where you can individualize both your pickup points and your destination points. Let me kind of go forward one more. A little bit more about demand response. You know, just like its title, it's demand-based. It's not route-based. You can envision where if you've got a route, it's a fixed location, fixed schedules, and it makes it a challenge to accommodate people who can't get to the bus stops, who their needs may not coincide with the set service. And so demand response allows you to effectively address that by individualizing how you provide that service. Again, a moment ago I talked about individualized trip pickup and destination. So it's not just you may not be available or your needs may not be consistent with the route structure, but your destination may not be well served by a fixed route structure either. One of the other benefits of demand response is that you can serve a broader geography. If you just kind of think of it operationally, if you've got a fixed route, you've got a set area you can cover. With demand response, you've got a much broader range. And then, of course, you've got coordinated delivery. You know, every service is you want to run as efficiently as you can, and so you want to coordinate this type of service to meet multiple needs. And that's certainly done here with demand response. Let me kind of go forward again. When you look at that circle again, we really don't see the basis for a set fixed route. We see the basis for basic mobility, to close that gap so that you do have transit service availability north of the river, but we will need to do it in a flexible way. Any questions so far?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
When are these population numbers, when were those created? Are they looking into forecasting and based on what is already being, yes?
They certainly are. They certainly are. You've heard me refer, I think, in other meetings to the regional travel demand model, and a core part of that is our annual collection of changes in population and employment. So we look at both current conditions and then project out over the course of 20 and 30 years.
Okay.
And what are the parameters for fixed services other than population numbers,
Well, I mean,
if there are any?
right. It depends on every community. It's a little different in every community. It depends on the nature of the service you're looking to start. It depends on what's known as sort of headways. How frequently do you want the buses running? Do you have enough population there to truly support that or not? There's a number of variables. I mean, one of the things that we tend to focus on a great deal when you have no service is, you know, transit can be kind of a nebulous thing. You don't really know where the demand is at until you have vehicles out there running and you get a sense of where the demand is truly at. Well, if you've got a fixed route, you tend to incur a lot of startup costs to do that.
Sure.
You've got the infrastructure, you're buying vehicles. Demand response allows you to approach that more constructively. If you structure it right, you don't have to go out buying vehicles initially or putting in a lot of the infrastructure. You can start running them based upon where the demand is at. And as you see the right level of demand, then you make the appropriate investments. So it's an approach for areas that have no transit service currently that seems to make a lot of economic as well as operational sense.
I mean, do we, you know, as part of making these decisions of any kind, to have any service or a certain type of service. I mean, when I think about all the development on 160, right, from exit 85, down to Gold Hill Road, do we take surveys of the population and find out if there really was a bus service that went uptown, if that's where the gang's going, would you use it kind of thing? I mean, are we doing that? I don't remember ever getting surveyed myself, as an example, but,
Those surveys of that type we have not done yet.
okay.
I mean, that is something that is done. One of the challenges, unfortunately, with those kind of services is an inclination or a statement that one is willing to use it, and those who actually use it on a dedicated basis.
Understood, yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Okay, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
David, 1 second, please.
Yes, sir.
The dial-a-ride. So if 10 o'clock in the morning, I call up and I want to go somewhere at 11:30, I can call the dial-a-ride, they're going to come pick me up at 11:30 and take me where I have to go. And then when I'm done where I have to go, they're going to take me back.
They will do it in a coordinated fashion. A couple things I'd kind of add here. They're gonna want more lead time than an hour and a half in
Okay.
order to do it. Because if you think of it, they've got calls coming in throughout the entire area. If they're gonna run it in a rational economic fashion, they need time to kind of logistically plot out where all their pickup points are at so they can route it in the most efficient manner. So they'll need more than an hour and a half.
So if I have a 9 to 5 job,
Right.
and I say to them every Monday, pick me up at this time, and every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every day of the week, pick me up at this time, that's enough time for them to hook us up with a dial-a-ride, and they will create a schedule potentially around my schedule?
They'll create a schedule that
Well,
can
too convenient.
be broadly compatible with your schedule.
Okay.
Because demand response, if you think of it, has a collection of 10, a dozen different people going to different locations. So they're always going to have to route it in a way that makes sense. I can't guarantee that you will go from point A to point B. You'll go in the most efficient route in order to service everyone that's on the vehicle.
So it's more
And-
like van pooling?
Yeah,
In
and
a
then
sense.
Yes, ma'am.
what is the distance that they will take you?
Right now, we have it structured that for a set fee, you can go anywhere within York County for that amount.
Okay, so then you can't go into Charlotte.
Generally, you would not be going up to Charlotte unless it's a unique circumstance. If it's medically based, if there's a unique medical facility you need to go to and it happens to be there, they'll work out an arrangement and the cost tends to reflect that, but that's a little bit beyond. this
And that's a
type of
cost that the dial-a-ride person would have to pay?
service. Yes, sir.
Okay, so then it's similar to a bus fare or something like that?
Taxi, Uber.
Taxi, Uber,
Yes, sir.
kind of a deal.
Except you go
Okay.
from point to point directly.
Right, okay.
Maybe you're gonna cover this, later, but who's maintaining these vehicles and where's the liability?
Yes, ma'am. Excellent questions. Right now, you've probably seen the York County Access buses.
Yes.
And the York County Council on Aging both owns these vehicles and maintains them, and they bear the full liability for their operation. What I think I've outlined for you previously is, if you would like to go forward and support this type of service, that we try to work with them for the first couple of years, and so you can get a sense of the demand, and then go forward from there. But those basic questions of who owns the vehicles, who has the liability, they would at this point.
I mean, and then if we were interested in something like this, would we work through RFATs or would we work directly with them? To actually,
It would depend on the scale of your service,
okay,
which is if it is at a certain level where it can be effectively incorporated with an existing service provider, that's probably the smarter approach to take. If demand response ends up being much larger, and let's say now you've got demand response north of the river, south of the river, out in Lake Wiley, then the basis for maybe establishing an independent RTA or regional transit authority to run it all as a coordinated system may make sense, but that would depend on scale and would be a number of years away from that under any circumstances.
is there any thoughts, and maybe this is one of those future things too, and I don't know logistically or even legally what the answer is, but in having CAT's expanded service, or your county coordinating or working with them to form some kind of a partnership, because, I would sense from here, many people that work do need to go to Charlotte, so the limitation of your county is not helpful. Or at least not all the time, anyway.
I mean, we do work with CATS now with the express bus service to meet that
Yeah,
need.
that's true,
And I
yeah.
think there's a much broader question that's related to what you're highlighting. I know Mayor Shepherd has spoken to this at RFATS about getting, whether it's some form of rapid transit alternative, something running along 21 that can link up with the light rail station, or a greater capacity for movement northbound. But that would tend to be beyond what demand response is structured to
Right,
address.
okay, thanks.
Is there an age minimum for the person to be using it by themselves?
You can only kind of tailor that a bit. There's some discretion there to say whether it's 16, 14, you've got to be accompanied by an adult. We can certainly set those parameters, but just as a general proposition, the service is available to everyone.
So really, who is the target audience here? I mean, I did see that the elderly, we have something currently in our city, and I spoke with Betty Worrell after your presentation about a year and a half ago, I guess now.
Yes, ma'am.
And she had 3 to 5 regulars every month. And they had 15 drivers as their volunteers. So I was trying to get a sense of how many people, at least medically, that was their main reasons, if someone would need this ride service.
Right now, when I think of the county's operations and then what I see at the city of Rock Hill, the majority of the people who use the service for basic mobility, it's medical-based appointments. That really dominates. Now, there is an employment-related component, sort of a ride-to-work service, and as you might expect, that's just people going to work, in effect. But the majority of the demand is for seniors, those with special needs, and those that are going for medical appointments.
Okay.
Let me kind of go forward with one more slide if I can, and talk about the funding variables, because this really goes to why that existing donut hole is there, where we have a lack of service right now. You know, transit service, just as a general proposition, is made up of 4 components. Most transit services are a combination of federal funding, state funding, local funding, and then, of course, fare box revenue, money from the users of the service. One of the challenges, really the principal challenge we've been faced with, is that tan area there, that's the Charlotte large urbanized area that extends across the state line here in Tega and Fort Mill and now the Panhandle. And if you don't have a service in operation, in order to become eligible to use the federal money that's based on that classification, you have to have at least 2 years worth of operations.
Yeah.
If you think of it kind of from a big picture standpoint, Washington might be viewed as saying, if you feel strongly about the service, that at the state level and the local level, show us the demand is there, show us you're supportive of it, and then after that 2-year point, if there's an operational basis for it, we will then become a part of that action. Now, one of the other challenges that impaired the ability to really move forward on transit service is that a couple of years back, there was a provision that said if you're in a large urbanized area, you know, a Charlotte or a larger city, you were not allowed to use the federal funding for demand response.
Right.
I mean, the basic thinking was if you're that large, you should have some skin in the game and probably have more expanded services.
Yep.
The challenge we faced was, well, we're part of that classification, but Tega and Fort Mill and the county are not akin to Charlotte in terms of operation. And you're holding us back from making a logical choice of the type of transit service that would serve us best based upon this classification. And when I was before you in December of 2015, I had said we had requested a technical correction to Washington to say this couldn't have been the intent when you wrote that. And thankfully, when they passed the most recent Federal Transportation Act, they put that a provision in that said you are now allowed to use it for demand response. You do, however, have to meet that 2-year requirement. And that's really why I'm back before you tonight. You know, we kind of talked about maybe a joint approach to initiating demand response, where we would have or ask the city of Tega, town of Fort Mill, and York County whether they would be willing to jointly support the local component to bring transit to the area. And it had been about a year and a half since we'd had that discussion. I wanted to come back to you to find out whether this is something you would have an interest in or not. We're going to go forward, kind of get into the numbers a little bit real quick. You know, when you look at demand response, we're talking about providing a base level of service. get a good sense of what the usage level is and the demand pattern. How frequently are people using it, and then where are they going? What are the average trip distances? I think I'd already talked about the low start cost component, and then of course you wouldn't have any initial capital investment. And when you look at the funding composition, if the federal money is not available to us for those 2 years, you'd need it to be made up of those remaining 3. Now, right there at the bottom, I've got a figure there. It says 30,000 passenger miles. Passenger miles is a term we use that basically says, here's the budget we've established to run this service. Now, 30,000 passenger miles seem to be more than enough to meet the need in the Rock Hill urbanized area when they started the transit service. So I kind of looked at what would more than effectively meet the need in Tega and Fort Mill, and said it will be probably at that level or lower. Now, from a budget standpoint, if you looked at 30,000 passenger miles, when you subtract the fare box revenue and the state funding support, that would basically come down to about $10,000 to $11,000 a year for those first 2 years per jurisdiction. If you brought it up 50%, let's say demand ended up being much higher than originally envisioned, it was 45,000 passenger miles, then your numbers would be 15,000 to 16,000. Here's an important thing to keep in mind. After that 2-year point, when the federal funding eligibility becomes active, those numbers would be cut in half. So you'd be able to basically run the demand response in TDK, your proportional share would be $5,500 a year at 30,000 and about 7,500 at 45,000.
Is that assuming a certain level of federal funding?
Well, yes, ma'am, it is. I mean,
And that, of course, is as much of a sure thing as,
You're waking up tomorrow.
oh, no, I'm waking up tomorrow, yeah, no.
it is as certain as it gets from a funding standpoint. It's based upon an urbanized area program classification, and
Yep.
that's unlikely to go away.
So what's the okay, so you're talking $10,000 to $15,000 per year for the city of TDK, the town of Fort Mill, and York County.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Since the mayor of Fort Mill, the mayor of TDK, and 2 county councilmen sit on RFATs, what are the chances of RFATs kicking into that number to reduce it?
RFATs wouldn't be in the position to do that.
Well, if we don't do the bridge, we could. But that's another discussion.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So then this is, this $10,000 to $15,000 is our portion.
Yes, sir.
Have you presented this to the town of Fort Mill yet?
Not yet. They are the last remaining. The last time I was able to reach out, I got a favorable review by this council as well as York County. But I am waiting to hear from the town of Fort Mill.
Okay.
And how about, so there's no thoughts about a prorated share based on the city or county or town size or population or whatever? Because obviously we're the small kids out of the group, but we're gonna pay the same share when it's highly likely that we will not have the majority of service.
That's an excellent question. I think one of the things we've tried to do is focus on one, simplicity, especially in the early years when we don't have the operational data, because on one level I hear what you're saying, which is numerically we have the smaller population.
Right.
But if the types of trips residents of TDK take tend to be longer than other jurisdictions, you can end up using more of the service, not less, even though your percentage of the population is lower.
Well, fair.
That can happen, and so there's no way for us to know that until the service is running for a few years at least.
Gotcha.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're asking us if we have an interest.
Yes, sir.
And if we have an interest, you're going to Fort Mill and you're saying that TDK has an interest.
And hopefully York County.
And if TDK says we don't have an interest, you're going to Fort Mill telling them TDK doesn't have any interest, you're on your own.
If one of the jurisdictions says, I don't have an interest, then the only other alternative is to say, do you want to split these costs among 2 jurisdictions, or do you not want to proceed and have any transit service?
So like, we could find ourselves in the same situation if
Correct.
somebody else opts out.
And-
That's certainly the case. It's, again, Mayor, as you know, it's all the operational data, all the projections tend to say that at some point, we're going to have a greater role for transit, whether it's demand response or fixed route.
Yeah.
if we have, if there are less jurisdictions in, so let's just say Fort Mill was out for sake of discussion, is our 10 to 15,000 remain, or now we have to put in 15 to 20,000 because we were counting on their 10 or 15?
The latter, regrettably the latter.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
I guess this is more of a political question than anything else. The city of Tega pays taxes to York County. City of Tega doesn't get a whole lot of services for that taxes that they pay to York County. Why wouldn't York County have a greater share in this $10,000 to $15,000? Same as Fort Mill. Why wouldn't the county pick up more of a share of that than the individual municipality?
One can certainly make that argument, based upon.
And I've been known to make a few arguments.
Yes, sir. Based upon the work we do at RFATS and the funding sources as well, it generally is a little bit different than maybe, I think, the relationship you're describing between an individual municipality and the larger county. Within the RFATS urbanized area, it is a little different. You could certainly make that case to the county, but what they may say is, we represent the portions of the county that are not otherwise represented by an existing municipality. And they might come back and say that their percentage of the population in that area is not as heavily weighted to them. And it might be somewhat of an extended discussion.
Okay.
David, did you say that you've spoken with York County yet and they've expressed a yay or a nay, or you haven't?
Yes, ma'am. Back in 2015, I spoke to them actually first before I appeared before you, and they did put forward and said, yes, we are supportive of this, and I believe it was 6-0, if I have my numbers right.
But recently you haven't circled back with them as you are circling with us?
I'm set to be back with them within the month.
Okay. Good.
Council, what do you think? Do we have an interest in pursuing this?
Not for me.
Do we, say, yes, we're interested? But there's no commitment if we say we're interested.
No, there's no commitment at this point. I mean, you'd want to know, I think every council would want to know whether you've got all the participants or not.
I mean,
But if we decide now, yes, we're interested, or we say, no, we're not interested, do we come back to this issue again or will you come back to us again for a formal vote of council to agree or not to agree? Because
would want-
you're not getting a formal vote here because it's not an agenda item.
correct.
I would definitely want to come back to you for a formal vote before we get into any contractual matters of budgetary or other things. I would want a formal vote from you. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I mean, and I would, from my way of thinking, I mean, I don't think there's any harm in saying I'm interested.
Yeah.
But I would also like some opportunity to find out if our citizens are interested, and what, and again, for us, and this is something we could do, I'm not suggesting you have to do it. Somebody saying, yeah, oh, gee, I'd be interested, doesn't mean they're gonna use it, but I'd like to know a little bit more about demand before David comes back to us perhaps to ask us to take a vote, and then we'll be better informed about the usefulness of the opportunity.
Appreciate the softball there. Can we put this presentation on our website and then create a Survey Monkey to say, are you interested? Leave it out there for 15, 20, whatever council decides, and have people respond. Are we interested in this? Or are we not interested in it? Does that work?
Yeah, I mean,
I think it works, but I'm a
I'd
little
like
concerned with
specific
some of the
questions.
population we're gonna be targeting here. Some of them don't even have computers. So
True.
I'm not sure how some of these, and at least the ones that Betty had told me about, they're on fixed incomes as well. When we first had this presentation, there was no mention of a fee to the person using it. And of course, there were no numbers because a lot of research had to be understandably done. So I'm also concerned about why are these people now going to switch to something else? They already have a service that's free.
that's true. And I think if we
Okay.
do a survey, we've got to formulate the questions.
Yeah.
And
I get-
explain a little bit more about what the potential offering is.
I agree.
Yeah, okay.
That work for everybody? Hey, Ryan, that works for you? Jen? David, you be okay with that? Thank you, David.
David,
sir.
thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate it.
I'm gonna roll right in.
Yes, sir. Let's roll. And yes, now I do think it's a little warm here. David. It's a little
All right, you ready, Charlie? All right. Call the meeting to order. Let the record show that this is a regular city council meeting held on Monday, June 19th. All members of council are present. The press has been duly notified. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council is going to remain standing for a moment of silence. You're welcome to join us if you'd like. And during that moment of silence, I would ask you to keep the Rundy family in your thoughts. They lost their son, Dennis, about a month ago, and we have not met since then, so I think it would be appropriate. And also remember everything that's going on in this world today. It's crazy. There isn't a time you're not seeing something, so please keep that in your thoughts. Thank you. Item number 1 on the agenda is a public hearing regarding ordinance number 509 in regards to the TCUD budget. City Manager Charlie Funderburk.
Actually, Mayor, if it pleases council, I've got Chief Parker here to discuss, as has been recently reported in the press, as we've discussed. I'm sorry, I skipped a portion here.
Yeah.
My mistake.
You got my disease.
Chief, hold on one second. My mistake. My mistake.
Trying to
Sleepy
rush the
brain
agenda, are you?
syndrome.
Yes.
I thought you
My
were going to talk
mistake.
about the TCUD budget. I thought there
I
had
was
been a
impressed.
change since we were last here.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, as is customary this time of year, a lot of it has to do with the fact of a different budget cycle. City of Rock Hill is on a July 1, whereas we're on an October 1. We have received written notification as required in our agreement from them and Town of Fort Mill, who is our water provider. City of Rock Hill is our sewer provider. Of rate increases. These are all being generated through rate increases with the City of Rock Hill. Fort Mill gets the water from Rock Hill, comes to us through a water line along Sutton Road, and our sewer goes through our force main that goes down under the river and to the Rock Hill Manchester treatment plant. City of Rock Hill is increasing their rates. Our rates are the rate they cannot charge us any more than what they charge their inside the city resident. So the rate increases that they're pushing to the city of Tega, to the town of Fort Mill, are the same rate increases that they are giving to their residential customers in Rock Hill. The reason for these rates is, at least as we've been notified, is due to capacity expansions both at their treatment plant, the water treatment facility, as well as the Manchester wastewater treatment facility. Basically, what you would be looking at on a volumetric rate for TCUD 1 customers, you're looking at about a 20 cents per $1,000 increase, going from $4.75 per thousand to $4.95 per thousand. On your TCUD 2 water rate, usage rate, you would be going from $5.98 to $6.18 per thousand gallons. They are also increasing their base charges, their minimum consumption charges. So you're looking at a 10-cent increase there. Obviously, no sewer increase for TCUD 2 customers, since we do treat those at our own treatment facilities. But your TCUD 1 sewer rate let's see, is going to go from 540 per thousand to 572 per thousand gallons. This is a straight pass-through rate. It does not increase the margins, so to speak, that we make off of the rates that are charged to us. It is simply a pass-through. The rest of the budget amendment, other than the rate, than those rates, is bringing in line. Revenues have done well, have performed well through May 31st. June billings that are being prepared now and going out, again, are still tracking favorably. We also included the FEMA grant, a portion of those matching funds that were discussed. Obviously, that entire project won't be completed this fiscal year, but a portion of it will get underway. So you see that new line item there at the bottom. So that is your that TCUD budget amendment that seems like this is the time of year that we end up doing that each year because of those rate increases and the change or the difference in budget cycles between the City of Rock Hill and us in Town of Fort Mill.
Did we have an increase last year?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
don't remember. And do we seem to get one every year?
They are forecasting rate increases through 2022.
And do we have no recourse, no negotiation opportunities, no anything?
These are we entered into a water purchase agreement with Town of Fort Mill and a wastewater transportation and treatment agreement in 2014. Both of those are 30-year agreements. Fort Mill does not charge us, they only charge us 30 cents more than what Rock Hill charges them, and that's for the transmission of the water through their water lines up to us. They're responsible all the way up to New Gray Rock Road, which is where our line ties in, and that's from the Highway 21 bridge. City of Rock Hill, back in 2012, eliminated their wholesale rates for everyone. That's City of York, York County, everybody. They only charge, but they have agreed to only charge those outside entities like us, the county, Town of Fort Mill, City of York, what they charge their in-city residential customers.
And are we sure that their costs are actually increasing? Do we have a way to verify that that's the case?
I know they have submitted plans and are still submitting plans to SCDHEC for those capacity increases
Do they have
for those
hearing-
major capital.
I'm sorry. Do they have hearings on those? Like,
Just their normal
the-
public hearings at city council meetings.
but
yes,
I
ma'am.
mean, the Public Utility Commission or
No,
anybody
ma'am.
like that
They're
doesn't
not-
have
they're
to
not
approve
subject
rate
to the
increases
PSC.
or any
No,
of
ma'am.
that?
It's straight through with DHEC, just as we are.
Thank you.
Charlie, so if I'm hearing you right, this is a straight pass-through of the Rock Hill water rate,
Rock Hill and Fort Mill, yes, sir.
plus some other expenditures that we had?
Well, the rates themselves are a straight pass-through.
Right.
Within the budget, there are some line items that have basically bringing line items into line. Like for instance, the equalization tank that we just took down. DHEC required us to hang on to that longer. Wouldn't let us tear it down. So those expenses were tracking higher than
So-
what was budgeted, so it's bringing those budget line items in
Okay.
line.
So had there not been a water rate increase from Rock Hill, we still would have had a rate
We-
increase?
Yeah. No.
No, sir, not
No.
necessarily.
So I'm not hearing this right, okay.
That is correct. If Rock Hill had notified us, hey, our rates are going to stay the same, I don't know that we would have come through with a rate increase. I'm fairly certain that we wouldn't be looking to increase those rates.
But we still may have gotten an ordinance for budget updates for
Correct.
other reasons.
Yeah, we probably at the end of the fiscal year, as we do with general fund, would have done a budget amendment just for accounting purposes to bring those, bring all the line items within line. If Rock Hill, Fort Mill were not doing a actual volumetric rate increase to us, we wouldn't be doing one. We wouldn't have a need for it, at least not at this point, no, sir.
Right.
It would be something we would be looking at as part of the upcoming budget year as to whether or not we would need one.
Anyone else?
Nothing here.
Is this where you want our questions in regards to the budget amendment? Or do you want to wait until the point of us voting for it?
Well, this is the public hearing. If council's got questions now, we can take those questions from the public, or we can wait for council's, and the actual, later on in the agenda, when it comes up as an agenda item. It's up to council, however you want to handle it.
Well,
Do it now.
I guess I have a few questions. Miscellaneous revenue in
Yes,
the,
sir.
in the budget. What is that?
Um,
And that's the revenue side.
mhm.
What is it?
Which is good.
Right.
Generally, that's,
It is,
like,
but it isn't.
return check fees, when we decommission meters and you're selling those, that scrap metal, things of that nature,
So-
that's what's going into there.
So we budgeted $3,500.
Yes, sir.
We've collected $18,580.
Correct. A lot of that was from the brass meters that we replaced.
And we're asking for a budget amendment for the next 4 months of the year to $20,000.
Based on the way it's trending, yes, sir.
Do we have any more meters that we need to return?
Yes, sir.
Do you want
Yes,
to
sir, we
buy
do.
some?
No,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
just I thought we would have done that all at once, but that's, I guess the other question I have is reconnection fee.
Yes, sir.
We budgeted 7,000, we've collected 10,000, and we're amending this budget for the next 4 months again to 18,000. Do we have people that are not paying their bill and getting disconnected to the point of $10,000 a year?
Yes, sir.
Wow,
That's a different problem,
exactly.
yeah.
And then, I guess the year-to-date budget in regards to penalty fee, which, David was alluding to, year-to-date, we've collected $2,400. We didn't budget anything, and we're amending it to $3,000. So I guess it's back to my question in regards to the reconnection fee. Do we have a lot of people not paying their bill?
Initially, yes, sir. They tend to pay it once the water gets turned off. But,
Okay.
I mean, any given billing cycle, you've got anywhere between some months 10 customers, other months 30 customers.
Dang, yeah.
Yeah. And all due respect, Dottie and Bob, please don't take this the wrong way, but under the expenditures, legal fees,
They're
We-
absolutely bona fide. No,
we budgeted 7,500.
Yes, sir.
Year-to-date, we've done 13,000. We're amending the budget to go to 15,000
Yes, sir.
for 4 months. So I'm curious, these are really swag numbers. We're going for a wild guess on all of these numbers, right?
No, I mean, when we present budgets to council, it's based on historical trends. But, yeah, I mean, at any given point in time through the course of the budget year, yeah, I mean, we don't have an exact crystal ball, but we do look at historical trends. We try to project as close as we can for the coming fiscal year. But as you go through it, yeah, by 6 months, 7 months, 8 months into the budget, yeah, you got a really good, accurate, as far as, all right, here's how things are going, here's how things are trending. But, I mean, when you're doing budgets in July and August and trying to forecast exactly what it's gonna be the following July and August, yeah, I mean, there are issues that come up that aren't foreseen that have to be taken care of.
Professional services. We budgeted $50,000, we've done $59,000. You're asking to amend the budget to $90,000.
lot.
Meters and supplies, we budgeted $125,000. To year-to-date is 97, almost $98,000. You're asking for $170,000. Auto expense, we budgeted $15,000, we've done $11,000. You're asking to amend to $18,000. And this one has been a pet peeve of mine for 9 years now. Cell phones. We budgeted $6,500. We've used year-to-date $4,300, and we're asking for $7,500 to amend the budget to. How are all of those numbers so far off if we're looking at historical data?
Which one would you like to take first?
I'm not quite sure which one I'd like to take first, but I wonder if we didn't have this water increase from Rock Hill at the end of the year, would our TCUD budget, both TCUD 1 and 2, be in the red?
No, sir.
Okay. I don't know. Anyone else curious about any of that, or am I just being a...
Seems practically normal with what I've seen since I've been on council. There's large fluctuations in each direction, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you see some line items were actually saving money for what was projected initially. But I know whenever we have all these workshops, there always seems to be something like a hiccup that comes up. I don't really know. There's no way you can forecast all these things.
I just would, the next budget cycle, if we can get tighter on those numbers, I think is what would be nice to see. Half, we budgeted 7,500, we're at amending to 15,000 now. I don't know. Maybe it's me. Any other questions from council? Are there any public comments in regards to the public hearing? There being none, we move on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is special presentations. And item number 2A, we have the police chief, Steve Parker.
So first, let me apologize for everybody having to see my legs. This was the first
Just the
week.
summer uniform?
Yeah. This was the first week of Camp Cadet, so this was the first day, so pretty excited. It's been a long day. The reason why I'm here today is to let council, citizens, management know that we have received our funding, our grant money for the body cameras. Last week we went live with the body cameras. We're excited about it, the transparency and the professionalism that we know it's going to bring. We already are a very transparent police department and a professional police department, in my opinion, but this is something that if somebody has a question, they'll be able to come in and look at the body cam or in-car cam, as we often do, and view it with them. So we're really excited about it. It's a simple tool. Just a clip goes into their uniform, and it clips onto their uniform. It's done magnetically. So then you just press, there's 2 ways to engage it. You just press the button, and it self-engages, so you manually do it. Or what we were waiting on was we knew that there's still some issues in body camera technology that need to come up to date. And with this, one of the things that we were waiting on was to make sure that the body cams coincided with the in-car cameras. So when we turn on our lights and siren, the body cam automatically comes on as well. That's important, because what happens in a high-stress situation, I'm not
Could
thinking
forget.
about hitting my body cam. So with that, I wanted to make sure, I think it's important for council and citizens to know these aren't the end-all, be-all. This is a moving target. Body cams technology and storage is just unbelievable how quick it's just moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. But I wanted to say that there's a couple things that we want to make sure that council and citizens know. They have a 10-hour battery life. We work a 12-hour shift. So there could be like a domestic violence that occurs that could fall into that dead battery stage where I wasn't able to dock it and get it on the battery. We're going to try to do that. We're working on those things, but that's something that I think everybody needs to know. As well as the other thing that I think is important for council and citizens to know is that if I'm not running my blue lights and siren and I was to get out to a domestic call or an assault and battery or disorderly conduct or whatever the situation is, and I wasn't able to engage my mic immediately, and it was a stressful situation. That could be a time where we don't have body camera footage. Now, these are some things that body camera footage companies are working on. They know these are issues, and we're trying to make sure that we have the best policy and practice in place. We had it state approved. In fact, we're one of the very first to have that approved. But I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that there are some small issues with the body cameras that we're continuously working on.
Yeah, it's not a perfect system by any means.
Nope. And I open for any questions if there are any.
How heavy is that, Chief?
It's probably about 2 pounds.
And there's no docking for recharging in the vehicles, I assume. Is it all back at the station?
There is a dock in the vehicle,
Oh, there
but
is.
it charges very, very
Slowly.
slow in the vehicle compared to a dock in the station.
Gotcha.
What kind of capacity does it have? If this thing's running all the time, is the battery more likely to run dead before the capacity of taking the video?
No, the battery would go dead before the video. This takes has a lot of storage. So the storage, we've invested a lot of money, but this is a moving target. And the workload for us is gonna be tremendous with discoveries and motions. We're now
Yeah.
having to give 5 people who showed up on a scene's body camera footage to defense attorneys and solicitors. So there's a huge, huge amount of work that's coming to the police department with this.
So daily, that gets turned in, and it goes to recharger, and it gets downloaded to some computer, some cloud someplace,
Yes, sir.
and it's just by this officer on this date, and then,
Yes, sir. It's a great system. We can send the footage by cloud, protected through the FBI SLED standards. So when it docks, it does everything wirelessly, and it can actually, when you pull in your car into our station, it will upload from pulling your car into the station because we have wireless capacity for that.
and then what's the requirement for storage? How long? I mean, is it,
So that's kind of a long story, so I would just say an arrest is 1 year, a regular traffic stop where we get no complaint, nothing happened, 30 days. So we've kind of set our standards based on what nationally is going on. If we have a major incident, then we can save it forever. So it just depends.
and that's a separate service that we're paying? That's not done in-house, I'm assuming?
The server is in-house.
The
Yes,
server
sir.
is in-house, okay.
Yes, sir.
That's a lot of footage to have to look at every day and
It's a lot of
go
work.
back, and, so that's a dedicated officer, I guess?
Well, we have somebody who's trying to tend to all those duties, yes, sir.
But you don't actually review the tapes every day. You review the tapes if there's an issue or an incident or a
Mo-
requirement to produce.
Well, something that the officers are doing now is they're reviewing the video footage, because if they write something down on an incident report, but it just is slightly different of what they recalled, because if you're in a high-stress situation, so a lot of times we are viewing the footage now. So there is a change in our requirements and demands.
Is that a standard practice
It is,
around? Okay.
to try to win our cases.
Ryan, any questions?
How many did you get, Chief?
We got 19. We put in for another grant for 10 more. Obviously, we know some of them are going to break. There's going to be issues, and we want to make sure that every officer has the availability to have one, because we know now with issues going on nationwide, it doesn't matter who it is, they better have one if you're in law enforcement.
And so that's a standard. Everybody's going to be wearing one this point forward.
If we're engaged in a law enforcement action, so there's a lot more that varies on that. So if narcotics is doing something undercover, no, they're not gonna have it, because there's some requirements there. So there's a lot of different standards.
Okay.
Jen? Thank you, Steve. Chief, sorry.
Thank you.
Well, he's in shorts, you know.
Thanks. Item number 2B on the agenda is the special recognition of Shane Bell, Sergeant Shane Bell, who was named the Upper State SRO of the Year.
Whoop,
Way
whoop.
to go.
So, really proud to stand in front of you right now on a different subject. About 6 months ago, the school resource officers for the state asked for submissions for School Resource Officers of the Year. Something came to our attention on some way that Sergeant Bell interacts with the children. One of the ones say, here he is at Camp Cadet this week, putting in his time. He was the first one to dive off of the boat in the polar plunge. That takes somebody special. But what really brought it to our attention, yeah, crazy. What really brought it to our attention is we had a high school student came back and said, "Can you help me ask my girlfriend to the prom?"
Aww.
And I thought what was impactful about that is 3 years later, after this student was out of middle school and now in high school, that he would come back to his SRO. And that's what we talk about, is the relationships and bonds that we're building with these kids to make a difference. And so with that, among many, many other things, we submitted Sergeant Bell's name. He was one of 4 officers in the state to win School Resource Officer of the Year. He won it for Upper State in 2017. I'm proud of him, proud to present him the plaque, and thankful for his work.
There you go, Shane.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you, guys. Item number 2C on the agenda is the Fire Department Oath of Office. Would Dylan and Alfric join me at the podium, please?
Okay, he's like 4.
All right, so I think we're going to do these one at a time. And Dylan, you're up first. So would you do me a favor and raise your right hand? And repeat after me. You hold that. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties
to exercise the duties
of the office I've been appointed,
of the office which I've been appointed,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and preserve,
protect,
protect,
and defend
the Constitution of this state
the Constitution of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
I got that light right in my eye. Welcome aboard. Thank you.
You want some picture too? There you go. All right, Alfred, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Repeat after me. Raise your right hand. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties
to exercise the duties
of the office
of the office
to which I've been appointed,
to which I have been appointed,
and that I will,
and I will,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and preserve,
and preserve,
protect,
protect,
and defend
and defend
the Constitution of this state
the Constitution of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. You good? Sure? Sylvia?
Went away too quick. Is that the chief you're yelling at, Sylvia? Is this your first time being firefighters? Your first? No, you've already, 5 years then? Okay.
Just do me a favor. Sign that, sign both of those, and give one to Charlie. Sign both of those and give one to Charlie. You're welcome.
Oh. Actually, I guess if I sit still, I'm okay, but. Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of money, I remember. I guess it controls this space too.
Give one of those to Charlie, and we're all set. Item number 2D on the agenda is the recognition of Bill Watson. Bill?
Bill's getting out.
Bill is getting out. Come on over here. Come on over here.
Running far and running fast.
Whereas the city of TEK wishes to honor and celebrate Bill Watson's long-awaited and most deserving retirement. And whereas Bill is retiring from the city of TEK and is being awarded this recognition as a testimony of his loyal and dedicated service for the past 10 years. Whereas Bill's retirement plans include fishing, RVing, house hunting? Really? Dining out. There's a group that meets on Mondays. It's the Romeos, retired old men eating out. Hook up with David O'Neill, he'll help you with that one. Keeping company in his backyard with the deer, and finally completing his wife's honey-do list. And when you finish with that one, my wife's got one for you too. And whereas Bill will be able to spend more quality time with his beautiful wife Terry, his daughters Natalie, Cadence, and Cynthia, and his grandson Garrison and Jacob, and his granddaughters Olivia, Courtney, Ashley, Tasha, and Alyssa. Whereas Bill will be missed both professionally and as a friend, and has displayed the highest example of character, morals, and unselfish service, and now therefore be it proclaimed that the mayor and the council of the city of TEK do hereby congratulate and recognize Bill Watson for his significant contribution to this city and his service to the residents and employees. We are proud to have him as a valued member of our community and wish him much happiness and good health as he begins his exciting new chapter in his life.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Dottie.
Enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Take me with you.
Perfect.
Yep, enjoy the retirement.
Thank you. Thanks, Charlie. Get some pictures.
They want pictures too.
You good?
Nobody ever wants a picture with me.
I'm trying to figure out why.
You sure that camera's not gonna break?
We'll find out.
Hello.
Good Lord, we'll never get out of here. Hey, we don't have an executive session, right? No executive session? God, they should have brought the chocolate out here then.
Item number 2E on the agenda is gardening on the K 40th birthday proclamation. Whereas gardening on the K has been is to be honored by members, families, and communities on the occasion of their 40th birthday, and whereas the continued contribution to the common good of the community and in the last decade alone have been recognized and achieved numerous awards of notes of the South Atlantic Regional Garden Club, the Garden Club of South Carolina, and the East Piedmont District of the Gardening Club of South Carolina for their outstanding community service, including providing garden therapy to seniors and handicapped, completing civic beautification projects, providing dignified stewardship and caring for our local Blue Star markers. Whereas they have served the needs and supported the Tega Elementary School and Riverview Elementary School, providing campus beautification and contributing to the objectives of the academic goals of the teachers and students. And whereas they have provided their signature porch warming for numerous new Habitat for Humanity homeowners in our area, whereas their One a Month campaign has contributed over 1,000 pounds of food and personal products to the Fort Mill Care Center, while their members continue to maintain and welcoming landscape at the food bank, providing year-round greenery, color, and seasonal decor. And whereas the gardening on the TGK, following the motto, making our community our garden since 1977, has been a force of good for 40 years. Now therefore I, George Shepard, Mayor of the City of TGK, along with the members of the City Council, do hereby deem and honor and pleasure to extend this certificate of recognition to the gardening on the TGK on this jubilant occasion of their 40th birthday, with sincere gratitude and best wishes for many, many more happy and productive years. You ladies want to come up?
Gardening on the K.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate this.
Congratulations. 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 All right, we're gonna move over this way a little bit, so we're not getting the podium out of the way. All right?
Maybe get on the end. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for all you do. Keeping it all so pretty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina.
I like to have people stop me.
Thanks for all you do, girl. Thanks for all you do. Great job, ladies. Great job. Thanks for all you do.
Woo! I need pizza.
Just pizza?
Well, that's fine.
Item number 3 on the agenda is public comments. Sean Crosby. It does. Charlie's going to help you out with that.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I want to touch up a little bit on what
Could you
David.
do me one favor, please?
Yes,
State your address for the
Okay.
record.
My address is 11064 Seven Cove Drive.
Thank you.
I want to touch up a little bit on what David from RFATS had presented to you all. I would benefit highly from the possibility of transportation here, especially the demand transit for people in my situation. And actually, a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, I met with Mayor Savage, and they said they are more than willing to consider the possibility of transit in this area.
Oh, good.
And I encourage you all to look at the possibility of getting transportation here. That would benefit me and others in my situation who are wanting to work.
Okay,
That's
great.
all.
Thank
Excellent.
you
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Are there any other public comments? There being none, close public comments. Move on to item number 4, which is the approval of the minutes for the regular city council meeting of May 15th. Are there any questions or deletions to those minutes? Hearing none, those minutes stand approved.
Oh, no.
Item number 5A on the agenda is the second reading of an ordinance to provide and establish the Tega Economic Development Commission. City Manager Charlie Funderburk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Again, before you tonight is the second and would be final reading of an ordinance to provide for the establishment of the TKK Economic Development Commission. Staff has already started advertising for applications on the city website. Have not pushed it tremendously yet. Obviously wanted to wait for a second and final reading. If council does give that tonight, we'll be pushing it heavily through all of our communication avenues, soliciting applicants to bring back before council at a later meeting for consideration. And we would ask for council's favorable approval at this time.
Thank you, Charlie. Council, entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the second reading of an ordinance to provide for the establishment of the TK Economic Development Commission.
I have a motion by David O'Neill. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ryan Richard. Any council discussion? There being none, call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Unanimous. Item number 5B on the agenda is the discussion of a potential amendment to ordinance number 77 regarding solar panels. City Manager Charlie Funderburk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As required by state code, a public hearing was held a couple months ago in regards to potential changes to Ordinance 77. Council at that time elected to table those proposed amendments. At our last council meeting, I believe it was Ms. Hersey asked if we could bring this back for council's discussion. We did include in your packets just what was originally proposed, and just looking for, through council's discussion, whether, council wants to move forward with anything in regards to solar panels, leave it as, basically leaving the zoning code the way it is, which there is no mention of solar panels. If council is interested in loosening this language, changing this language, just basically giving staff direction that where we can actually bring something back to you at a subsequent meeting if that is council's desire.
Okay, so without an amendment to this, what do we follow?
Basically, if someone were to want to install solar panels, we would have to follow the building codes in regards to the electrical hookups. Obviously, we would have to follow the front, rear, side setbacks, and that would basically be it. Is that correct, Susan? Yes. So whether they're ground mounted, used for siding on the side of the house, placed on the roof somewhere, there are no current limitations within the city's zoning code on that, but there are restrictions within the International Building Code. And those are more from a safety standpoint, with the, just like with any electrical stuff, things of that nature. It does speak to them there, but it doesn't limit them as far as where, at least on your property, they could be. The building code doesn't.
So every solar panel that has been put up in TK is following the International Building Code?
That is correct. That's the only thing that we have to guide us at this point is the International Building Code and the requirements that are spoken to in it.
Okay. I'm going to go back to my same conversation that I had the last time we brought this up. This talks about roof mounting installations. It says that the solar panel has to be on the rear of your house. I don't have a roof on the rear of my house.
Oh, well.
Where do I put my solar panels? to be perfectly honest with you, what is the rear of my house? Because I have a side door, and then I have sliding glass doors that face the lake. So does that mean my side door, that I consider a side door, is now my front door? Or what is the front of my house? What is the rear of my house? Same kind of a thing when you go to the golf course. You know, we're talking about how we want these to be, I think there's one point here where it says something about the collection panel can't have any kind of reflective finish that would interfere with, you know, someone.
Oh, there's
So-
quiet enjoyment,
Right,
yeah.
so you put them on the rear of your house, and your rear of your house faces the golf course, and now you're putting a glare on the golf course. I think it's something we need to do, but I don't think that these are the answers. I think to get a professional in here who installs them and potentially talk to the planning commission about what needs to happen, you know, and then the news the past couple days has been talking about North Carolina, who is the second largest person or people using solar panels. Now they have the volunteer fire department in Cherryville, I believe, up in arms, because what happens when you have a roof fire and you've got solar panels on top of the roof? How do you air that roof? How do you vent that roof to get the heat out of the fire structure? And then when you have a fire, you can easily turn off the electric, but how do you turn off the solar? So those are all questions that I think need to be addressed. And personally, I'd like to take it back to the Planning Commission and have them do a little more homework and due diligence before something comes to us. And an idea of that due diligence is talk to the fire chief, talk to other fire departments. How do you handle it? How do you deal with it? And I think, you know, just putting a blanket statement out there saying it's got to be on the front of your house or it's got to be on the rear of your house just doesn't work here in Tega. Sorry.
Also about capacity. Right now, we don't have anything about capacity, so somebody can start a solar farm if they wanted to. So I'd like to see something in there that said that you would only be able to have as much capacity to serve yourself, your own home versus.
A solar farm.
Right. And then right now can you put a solar farm for your own use in your front yard? There's no restrictions for that, right?
As long as it meets the setbacks.
There,
As long as it meets a setback?
As far as accessory uses and things like that, you'd have to refer to what is allowed technically in the front yards. I don't know, I'd have to go back and look specifically at that part of the zoning
So
code.
we'd-
I don't know that you could just cover your entire front yard with it, rear and backyards, yeah. Or, excuse me, side and as long as you are within the buildable setbacks, yes.
So we probably want to look at something about that, too.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, I agree with everything I've heard so far.
That exists in Tega right now.
Yeah, he saw it.
We saw that.
You know, obviously understanding what others in South Carolina are doing and so forth would be important. But I had another thought that just left my head. Oh, here it is. It came back. In the meantime, okay, we're not gonna get all of this investigation done and get the planning commission to come back to us and have something to really look at, because it's clear that we should not be throwing this together. Because we're gonna live with it for a long time. I don't know if there is some way that we can put a moratorium on them for a period of time and make sure that we actually have, I don't know that we can, because there's no law that says but anyhow, I'd like to talk about what our options might be in the short run, in that regard. If we have any, because in the meantime, if people are thinking about doing this and then they hear that we're thinking about regulating it, there's gonna be a run on the bank, so to speak, potentially, to get it done before there's rules that limit how it can be done. So I don't know, Bob, you may be able to give us some advice now or later on that. if we need
There's
it.
something known as the pending ordinance doctrine. I don't know, I'd have to go back and look and see what your process is to date to see if you are close to having a pending ordinance.
Okay,
I'm hearing a lot of different discussions up here.
okay,
I'll look into it and get back to you on what you need to do to fall within that doctrine. And basically what it is that if you've got an ordinance pending, and those are all definitions within the law,
right,
then people need to come within those provisions of that ordinance.
understood.
It stops, the purpose is to stop what you're talking about as a rush
Okay.
to it.
And the other issue of, I think many of us have a lot of concerns with the way this was drafted in the first place, obviously. The whole notion too of the homeowner getting buy-in from their neighbors and all of that. I'm opposed to that because if I'm really good friends with David, you know, I might say, oh, sure, Dave, I don't care. And then he decides to move out in 2 years and then I'm stuck with this, or worse yet, I decide to move out in 2 years.
And you
And I
can't
can't
sell
sell
your
my
house
house
because you have this
because
monstrosity.
he's got this whole monstrosity over next door to me. So, I think there's a lot to look at, I think, is what you're hearing. And this is new ground for us, but boy, you know, a lot of people have been installing these lately and we need to get it controlled before, or we already have to live with, we already know what's been done. And people have been abiding by all the rules and ordinances that exist. But we've already got to live with it, and we've got to get it under control. And I hate regulating everything, but this
Me
one's
too.
important to home values, I think. And I know it's good for the environment, many people think, and it theoretically saves money too, so I'm not completely opposed to it, but we need to be careful about it, is my opinion.
Yeah, we want to make it where it's people, we want to encourage them to use solar, I think, but we don't want to make it
solar
so,
farms.
yeah, we don't want to make it so freewheeling that it just restricts on people, their aesthetics of their other home who don't want solar or something, you know? You know what I mean? Maybe we don't have to
Balance.
reinvent the wheel. Maybe there might be other communities that have something that we can say, oh, I like a little bit of B or something like that.
Chinese menu.
That's it, exactly.
Is there anything we've seen where it shows that solar diminishes the property value?
I'm not aware of any such report,
Yeah, I hadn't-
at least not at this time.
No,
But
I don't.
I'll be honest, I've not investigated from that
To me, it would
standpoint.
raise the property value
Well,
think
because
so.
the
Brian,
investment that
I
you
would
put
think
in
so.
it.
It would, except I sent you a photo 2 months ago now about what I'll call a solar farm that's at the
Right,
end
in
of
that
Lake
one
Forest Drive.
scenario, I understand that.
Okay, but that was perfectly legit, perfectly legal, and if those homeowners are listening, they're good. They did everything they needed to do, and I already told them we're not coming after them to take it down. But if I were the neighbor right across from them and I wanted to sell my house, I do think that could be a deterrent, unless I'm getting power off that grid, which I wouldn't be if I was that other home. I wouldn't buy a house with that in my,
It's TK.
essentially,
Somebody would.
essentially in my front yard.
Not for the price. You'd have
Well, I think that's the point. And
Yeah,
so
my
I think,
first vote would be to stop building houses, then we have less roofs for solar on top of them. That's my number one go-to. The second would be, I don't think it necessarily diminishes the value. I'm less regulation. I mean, definitely, I could understand with the solar field and things like that we should definitely put a halt to things like that, because it is an eyesore, and I completely agree with you there. But when we're talking about putting solar panels on roofs, it's not gonna diminish the value of the house, it's gonna increase it.
I didn't say it
It's gonna
would.
allow
Yeah, we're talking
people.
about like front yards and
Right,
side,
and I
yeah.
agree
something,
there,
Yeah.
but
farms
No.
and,
But when you're talking about solar panels and allowing people to reduce their electricity bill, who are we to say?
Exactly.
You're not allowed to do that?
And I don't
We don't
think-
have that power.
My
I don't
sense
think any
is
of us
none
have
of us are saying that, so let's be careful. I don't think any of us are saying that. I think we're all saying that we don't want to be a deterrent, but we do want to make sure it's done smartly and in a way that's aesthetically pleasing.
I had questions regarding how is this, what are the consequences? There was nothing in the portion of the package. And how is code enforcement going to be tackling this? Most things are complaint driven, and that would just cause more problems between neighbors. So how is this going to be enforced?
Yeah, I mean, it would be, I don't think anyone on staff has any notions based on how things went previously, that what's in here, what's in your packet tonight is what's moving forward. You bring up a very good, I mean, when it's left to neighbor complaint and things of that nature, that's language that we need to drill down and work with Planning Commission on. We'll be looking at other cities, what regulations they have. But yeah, I mean, having something that is aesthetically pleasing to the neighbor and things of that nature, we don't want to create feuds between neighbors to where we are now having to referee those type matches. So
No, I
making
agree with
sure that
that.
we are clear with whatever the language ends up being in the zoning law. We want to make certain that we're taking that portion, that side of it out to where it is not a, you know,
That's
if
smart.
it becomes as simple
Smart.
as must be mounted on your roof somewhere, then the enforcement's easy. Okay, if you put it on the side of the house or in the yard, then it takes the guesswork, so to speak, out of it. And that's what we'll be working to do, listening to the comments. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you. I think I may be interrupting you. You may have others before I continue.
Go ahead.
From what I'm hearing thus far, council is interested in regulating it somewhat, but not over-regulating, if that makes sense. And I'm not trying to make light of it. We are interested in having something in the zoning laws.
We need something balanced.
Guidelines,
and we
maybe not
need-
regulations.
And as you say, they need to be clear, and we know that no matter what the ordinance is and what the topic is, in this case, it's solar panels, everyone's not gonna love it in the whole city, and maybe all of us won't love it either. But, you know, we have to come up with what is the best approach that accommodates, you know, most of the needs of keeping the city looking a certain way while accommodating what our homeowners have a right to do, and so forth and so on.
I guess, Charlie, from my perspective, I'm really not sure I'm interested in regulating it. But I'd
Interesting.
like to see what a regulation would mean.
Okay.
That's-
I agree with that. I don't know how we can actually even, for example, the whole backyard, there's a lot of backyards that are front yards
Yeah,
in the old portion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess we're just telling all those people that you cannot have it
yeah.
at all.
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot more homework, so I think that's
Yeah.
really the
Yeah.
point, right?
Exactly.
Challenge accepted. We will get to work on it, both with staff as well as with the planning commission, and work
And the
to
fire
bring.
chief.
And most certainly, and work to bring something back to council. I hate to set a time frame on it, but I would
Don't
think
set a
that,
timeframe.
yeah, August, September, timeframe, but we will work to bring something back to council in a reasonable amount of time, after we put a little more work into it, done a little bit more investigation based on comments heard tonight.
And I can't imagine that there are not other jurisdictions that don't have an ordinance that may be operating just really quite well. Again, it may
Again.
not accommodate our needs, but at least it's something to look at.
State of North Carolina is the second highest user of solar.
Somebody's got it.
So there's got to be an ordinance. I would also include Board of Zoning Appeals
Yes.
as part of that discussion,
Okay?
because ultimately, they're going to be the ones that are going to be making decisions if someone wants to change something.
Yeah, true
So
enough.
Let's get them into the equation.
Great segue.
Thank you. Any other questions, demonstrations, and manifestations of violence on this topic?
Well, some violence.
Item number 6A on the agenda is the committee appointments for the Board of Zoning Appeals. Do we really have to cast the ballot? Motion to approve the nominee of Alyssa Dash to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Second?
Motion seconded by David O'Neill. Any discussion? There being none, call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Congratulations.
Is this out of turn? Like, did somebody quit or resign?
Abigail Duvall resigned her position, so it's
Do we know why? Is it something we did or something somebody else did or?
No, sir. She, I believe, has an interest in running in the upcoming election, as she has,
Run in the past.
at least for the November election, and at least that's what has been made known to our staff liaison. There may be others, but no, it was not a nasty divorce. I think she just chose to go a different route.
That's the divorce. Item number 6B on the agenda is the approval of a performance and labor and materials surety agreement for the final plat of Cadence Map 1. City Manager Charlie Funderburg.
Before me, your attorney.
Yeah, what traditionally developers here do is ask you to accept some sort of financial security in lieu of them completing all of the infrastructure within a particular platted area, so that they can get final plat approval. The last 12, 14 years, that's been either cash in a city account or a letter of credit. If you go all the way back to Lake Shore, back then, some performance bonds were offered by Newland. Long story short, in this case, Mattamy is asking you to accept a performance bond instead of a letter of credit or cash. And we've just found this out. That's why I'm telling you now. So if you want to accept some type of financial security in lieu of completion of all the infrastructure prior to final plat being approved, then I would ask that you change the wording of this as approval of a performance bond for final plat for Cadence Map 1 upon review and approval by city staff and city attorney. We're not there yet on the bond form. So it would be that, I think you could approve the acceptance of a performance bond with that contingency that it's approved by city staff and city attorney.
And why do we have to do that today?
To go along with the public streets, don't you know?
Charlie, can you expand on
Yeah,
that, or
I need,
on that question?
He's wanting to know why today. Do you want? Well, Mr. Mayor, your question is why today?
right,
Instead of next meeting?
right.
Mattamy wants to get the final plat approved by the city as soon as they can, I suppose, so they can start the next stage of the development. Is that selling lots? Well, in their case, they might not be selling.
They can't record the final plat until this is completed. The final plat allows them to start going vertical with the patio homes to be able to sell those lots. I mean, that's really the answer. I mean, they can't move, the final plat cannot be recorded.
But in lieu of cash in city accounts?
Well,
Performance bond instead?
we've had one developer that did cash in a city account. That was with River Lakes. It was for a very small amount because there was already a lot of, folks, hold on. Because there was a lot of infrastructure already there because it was in the county. With Lake Ridge, Serenity Point, that's when they started doing the letter of credits. As your attorney has told you, with Newland and the Lakeshore development, it was all done with bonds.
With performance bonds?
Yes.
With the same type of bond?
Same type of thing. And as they, basically it allows them to get to the point where they're able to start selling off those properties, selling off those lots, as they continue to move forward with installing the infrastructure, versus having to install 100% of the infrastructure before they can then start selling the lots. The bond, or in this case, or in previous cases, the LOC, that money is there in case the developer walks, goes bankrupt, a number of different things, to where the city could then collect on that money to finish or complete that, cause that infrastructure to be finished, completed.
I mean, there's nothing as good as cash, of course, right?
Correct.
Because that's in your account. Do you know whether a letter of credit, for lack of a better word, say is more secure or more of a sure thing? Because obviously with a letter of credit, the bank is directed to release the letter of credit, the funds associated therewith, in the event of a particular event, I believe, which makes them very secure. And they're used all the time, and especially in international deals. So how about a performance bond? what's the guarantee, for lack of a better word?
If you put 100 attorneys in a room, you'd probably have 50 on either side of that. 50 would say a letter of credit and 50 say a performance bond. Mattamy has come back with this. And I've talked to Jim Sheedy, who does a lot of collection
Oh,
work,
yeah.
about it too.
Yeah.
He, for instance, as a collection guy, prefers performance bonds over letters of credit for some technical, nuanced legal reasons. The bond form they've given us so far, I don't find acceptable. But they have not seen our response to that. I'm going to mark it up, and we're going to get back to them to see if we can get there on it.
Was there this is a change, perhaps, or I guess the question is this a change, and was cash pledged, if you will? Is that what our understanding was when we approved this, and now, once again, something is changing that's,
I don't think you've approved, this hasn't been before you yet.
okay, and in any of our approval documents or any of the discussions that we had, was there some quote understanding?
This would have been the
or-
first, this is a unique, a specific niche in the process. It wouldn't have been before you until tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Wouldn't it be in our best interest? You know, it's like approving Windhaven before a traffic study's complete. Wouldn't it be in our best interest to wait until you've marked this thing up, brought it back, and came to a mutual agreement
Yeah.
with this developer?
This is
To
back.
say, okay, now, guys, here's what I have, here's what I believe, I think it's a good-to-go document, let's approve it.
So this is back to the mayor's question, why tonight
Yeah,
instead of another night? And I just
question.
talked to Susan. Typically, developers, as compared to home builders, are even more interested in getting this final plat as quickly as they can because they want to go sell the lots before they've built all the infrastructure. It's cash flow. In this case, I just turned around and asked Susan, I said, why does it matter here? Because Matamy's not a developer. They're not out there selling lots like Drake did. And Susan tells me that once they have the final plat, they pre-sell the lots with an agreement to build a home on it. So once again, it's cash flow. The sooner they can get their final plat approval, and I'm not asking you to do it. I'm explaining the process. And the sooner they get their final plat approval, the sooner they can pre-sell a lot and start building a house.
okay.
So that's the answer,
We're
I
not
think.
there.
Well, and as a point of clarification, that's not just unique to this development. That's the way they've all been done, back to Lakeshore. When, Mayor, I think you came on towards the tail end of Lakeshore,
Yeah, I had,
where they would do bond reductions.
Yep,
As they do those plats, and, Lake Ridge with the LOC reductions, and things of that nature. On this particular map, they've got a lot of the infrastructure already in, as far as the water lines, sewer lines, stormwater lines. Working on the roads right now, I think Stone Base has gone down. A lot of the curb and gutter has gone in. Again, that's for the first phase. And it is, just like Bob, I'm not advocating either way, just making the point that this is not the first development. I mean, this is not unique just to Cadence or Mattamy, but.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to table this, table item 6B for discussion at a later date.
I have a motion by David O'Neill. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ryan Richard. Any council discussion? There being none, call the question. All in favor?
I mean,
Are we asking the attorney to,
Well,
for
I
Bob to complete things?
yeah, I
Okay.
think, Bob, continue doing what you're doing. No, not. All right, so we're okay with what we're doing here?
okay.
All right. I have a motion by David O'Neill to table. I have a second by Ryan Richard. Any more council discussion? Being none, call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Item number 6C on the agenda is the introduction of the first reading of amending ordinance number 509 regards to T-CUD budget and fees. City Manager Charlie Thunderbird.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As stated previously during the public hearing, tonight before you is a proposed ordinance for the amendment of Ordinance 509 regarding the FY 16-17 TCUD budget and fee schedule. Up on the screen, and Tim, if you can show those to our folks watching from home, it shows you the highlighted line in yellow is for year ending 2018. As I stated previously in the public hearing, Rock Hills will be going live with their increases July 1. But you can see their rate to Fort Mill on water would go from $1.61 to $1.81, which means Fort Mill's rate to us would be at $2.11. In keeping that same margin, our rate would go from $4.75 to $4.95. The sewer rate from $5.40 to $5.72. And then on the water rate on TCUD 2, again, the same, it's as a straight pass-through rate. We would ask for council's favorable consideration at this time.
Thank you, Charlie. Council, entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to make a motion to approve the introduction and first reading of an ordinance to amend Ordinance 509 in regard to the TCUD budget and fee schedule.
I have a motion by Dottie Hersey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jen Stalford. Any council discussion? Call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Nope.
So what does this do for the contract for the water then?
I mean, the fee's gonna
Doesn't do
increase
anything. It means
regardless.
the fees in the budget stays exactly as council approved back in October, which means the whatever rates that Rock Hill and Fort Mill are increasing, we're eating.
We will be picking up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't,
Well, I don't think I have a
But-
problem with the pass-through part. it's the other
well,
stuff.
Voted no.
hello, you
You
just
just
voted
voted
on
no
it.
for it.
No,
No,
I
did.
didn't.
Understanding, the way
Take out
I'm
all that
doing
other
it
stuff,
is
I'm okay
because of
with
the fact of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions that I asked in regards to the budget and in regards to the amendment. I don't understand them. So that's why I voted no.
Me too.
I voted no that we're increasing, and I'll go through it again. I don't understand,
Need to.
you know, why we're doing miscellaneous revenue. Budgeted 3,500, actual 18,000, we're amending to 20,000. I don't understand it. That's just one example.
Can,
And until those things get explained to me and clear as to what it is, I can't in good conscience move forward. I don't have an objection to you coming back to us next month.
Yep.
And doing this again with more of an explanation, but right now, as it stands now, no, I can't. That's my vote. And I hope I explained it, Kathy, since you were the one that asked.
Charlie, may I ask, when is the rate increase in effect, coming into effect, actually being July 1st?
July 1st,
Okay, so
with
that's
the
an
start
issue.
of the Rock Hill budget.
Okay. Is there a way, and I don't know if my fellow council members are interested, but I'll just ask the question, for us to approve this motion, to amend this motion to only approve the increase? I mean, it doesn't matter if we approve it or not, but to approve the fee schedule increase effective July 1st without getting into all of these other items that are on the budget where the numbers are moving that the mayor and others have questions about. Because they're two different issues from where I stand. And is there a way for us to amend that within the Roberts rules and everything else tonight, or no?
I'm gonna have to look at it. If that's gonna be something that you're gonna try to do tonight, I'm gonna suggest you take a recess. I'm gonna have to see who voted against it. Just speaking from memory before I look at it, it's gonna have to be brought back up by one of the people who voted against it, and there's a certain procedure. I'm gonna have to look at Robert's rules. I don't know right now.
And let me ask if Charlie, if this is the increase is effective July 1st to the city, when would we when would we be billed for that increase?
If
August,
if
or-
things had moved, through tonight, okay, we were going to, our plan was exactly what we've done in years past, is after the second read. So you're looking at your July usage, August bill, when the August bills go out, it would have this new rate.
So right now, we're looking at September at the earliest, unless we had a special meeting, if this stands as being voted down in terms of
Without a,
increasing the rates.
correct, without a special meeting, you would be July, August,
September.
potentially.
Okay,
So Bob, if I'm understanding you correctly, you need to research this as the amendment, as the motion was made, which was the budget and fee schedule.
I mean, you voted it down, right?
Right.
Three
So
voted
what
it
happens
down.
if a motion-
I've got to look at, I'm not even sure you can do it at this meeting. I've got to look, at if you are, if I'm now hearing from council that they want to go back and take another bite at the apple tonight, I would ask you to take a recess or maybe reconvene after you do
we don't
the-
have one.
the other things.
Oh, yeah, we could do that.
So,
I need chocolate anyway, but.
Council entertain a motion to adjourn for 5 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to make a motion that we take a 5-minute comfort break.
I have a motion by Dottie Hersey. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Jen Stalford. Call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 5 minutes.
Chocolate. No, you nays have to raise it and second it. No, just a motion to reconsider the vote on item.
Council is back in open session. Council, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the first reading of ordinance number 509 in regards to the TCUD budget and fee schedule. That is my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ryan Richard.
Mis-
Again, the reason I have a problem with this is not the fee schedule, it's the budget portion of it.
correct.
So-
Okay, and I believe the negative Nellies, as Dottie would call us.
Or
That's
men.
our reason,
Just-
or men.
Yeah.
Nelson's.
So, at this point, I'll entertain a motion. Dottie?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the introduction and first reading of an amendment to ordinance 509. No, only two.
Sorry to interrupt. The first step, I believe, is to take a vote
Oh,
on
you're right.
whether you're going to
Sorry.
Yeah,
reconsider or not.
we didn't do the rest
Right,
of the
we got
vote.
into the whole
Yeah,
thing. I'm
that
sorry.
was, I
Thanks.
heard a motion, I didn't hear a second, I didn't hear a vote on it.
Ryan
We had a
seconded.
second. Ryan seconded.
We're good. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Now we have our vote. Dottie?
Mr. Member, Mayors of Council, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the introduction and first reading of an amendment to ordinance 509 in regard to the TCUD fee schedule change only, and not to the remainder of the budget change that was proposed.
I have a motion by Dottie Hersey. Do I have a second?
Second with discussion.
Second by Ryan Richard with discussion. Go ahead, Ryan.
Just a quick question, I guess, for staff. When you showed last year, this year, next year, as far as for the fee increases, when we make this line item next year, so we don't have to do it every June, we know what the increase is going to be currently, don't we?
It's
Or is it
only
estimation?
proposed. We don't bring this to you guys until it's gone to Rock Hills Council. So right now, this is what their staff is proposing as their projected fee schedules on out, all the way to 2022.
Right.
But to hit those fee increases on the front end and then Rock Hill not approve them, then we've unnecessarily increased our rates, is the main reason why we have waited until this point in time in the budget year, in years past, but.
Okay, I just didn't know
Hold on,
if with the budget, we could have the option built in there based on the proposed fee schedule for the following year. And
Right.
if you can't, good, you know. I'm
You're
not-
talking.
Yes.
Where it
this
shows
slide
the
right here.
year ending 2019, them going from $1.81 to 201, and then Fort Mill would be 231 to us. I mean, if that's what council wanted to do, you could, but at this point, Rock Hill City Council has not considered those those rates yet.
Right. All right,
So-
cool. That was just my question.
Interesting point. Any other discussion? Call the question, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Item number 6D on the agenda is the approval of the Metro Dwelling LLC contract. City Manager Charlie Funderburk.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, as was reported to you at at your last council meeting, we did get a favorable bid in from Metro Dwellings LLC for the purpose of installing the backup power generators at the TCUD 2 lift stations. This is the FEMA grant that the city was awarded. And before you tonight is standard AIA contract between the city and the contractor. And we would ask for council's favorable approval of this contract and allow us to move forward with this project.
Thank you, Charlie. You want to make a motion, or?
Sure, I'll make the motion, then I'll ask my question. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Metro Dwellings LLC contract for the installation of backup generators at the TCUD 2 lift stations and authorize the city manager to execute said documents.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Ryan Richard. Dottie, you have some,
Yes, in the information that we received regarding this, it said there's a required match for the FEMA grant, which was included in the TCUD amendment that we rejected or didn't vote on, I should say. So what does that earlier vote do to this particular matter?
I mean, our plan would be to come back to council with a potential revised budget amendment that would include these fees, but council can include our match as part of the motion with the approval of this, if you would like.
Would it make more sense perhaps to table this item until we get a revised TCUD budget that would include the money for this grant? And if we did that, is there a problem in terms of accepting the FEMA grant deadlines or anything like that?
We do have some timeline requirements from the FEMA grant. We've got to begin submitting our reporting documents by September of this year.
Okay.
In your approved TCUD budget, you had approximately $179,000 that would be reserve fund, cash transfer at the end, basically revenues over expenditures.
In the
We do not-
in the existing budget?
In the existing budget that is approved, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You're probably only going to incur between now and the end of the fiscal year approximately $45,000 to $50,000 as part of this as we move forward into the 17-18 budget is where the bulk of your work's going to come in and invoices in regards to our match. Your total match is $121,000 for the entire project. They're not going to get the entire project done between now and the end of this fiscal year. I mean, you're looking at a small portion in this fiscal year and the rest of it in your upcoming fiscal year.
so then Dottie could change her motion to have $40,000 of the match taken from the TCUD 2
Reserves.
contingency today.
Yes, sir.
So that would cover us on our FEMA grant.
For the rest of this fiscal year, yes,
And
sir.
then the balance of that would come out of our next fiscal year.
That is correct.
Are the charges, is the work that's gonna be done, the balance of which is next year, is that it? Is this a one-trick pony, or are we
Yes,
gonna?
ma'am.
Okay. That's fine.
What do you want to do?
I mean, I'm happy to amend my motion
Would you
but,
remove your second? Dottie, go for the amended motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Metro Dwellings LLC contract for the installation of backup generators at the TCUD 2 lift stations and authorize the city manager to execute said documents and apply $40,000 from the TCUD contingency budget for the FEMA grant match.
A motion by Dottie Hersey. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Ryan Richard. Any council discussion? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Item number 7 on the agenda is the city manager's report. Charlie Funderburk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few items. I'll try to be quick. New fire department ribbon cutting will be taking place on Saturday, January 8th at 1 p.m. Invitations to local dignitaries, the other fire chiefs around the area are out, and we are starting to get responses. The facility looks absolutely amazing.
does.
We're looking forward to showing that off to council and to the community on July 8th. So we do want the community to come out. We'll start pushing out more information to the community via our communication avenues over the coming days and weeks. But definitely looking forward to showing that facility off. Council, you may or may not be aware, Sergeant Larry Neely with our police department. I know we've shared some stuff recently on our social media, but so forgive me if I am duplicating this, but his son has a rare condition that affects his ability to speak, stand, walk, sit, crawl, even swallow. There's a fundraiser going on currently through a group called All Things Possible Ministries. Links can be found on the city's Facebook page. We'd love for the community to pitch in, help out with Larry and what he's going through. They're trying to raise enough money, first and foremost, for a specialized car seat for Logan that insurance just does not cover, and potentially raise enough money for them to perhaps get a minivan or something like that to where they can take one family vehicle when they go grocery shopping instead of having to take two, and because of his wheelchair and things like that. So again, we've pushed that out on social media and just wanted to bring attention to that again. At the last meeting, I was asked about an update on the safe zone at PD for people that are purchasing items online like Craigslist or the buy sell trade, where you meet them in the parking lot kind of thing and exchange money and for what you're buying. That project is in process and should be functional in the next couple of weeks. Chief Parker, Tim Gillette, Mark Slocum, our IT manager, thanks to those folks for getting the kinks worked out on that, both on the camera system as well as the placement of where those things will be. Chief Parker also has it enrolled in a national program, which will provide us with the free signage, designated those areas and whatnot. So here in the next couple of weeks, that should be fully functional. Council, as I reported to y'all last week, the EQ tank, the equalization tank, the lake tank's been called a lot of things, some that I can't repeat here, was finally removed from wastewater treatment plant number 2. I'd like to thank Philip Jolly and his utility staff for getting that taken care of. And I'm quite certain that our friends and neighbors that are at the end of Palmyra and up on Marquesas are glad to see that thing gone. Still got a little bit of site work, just cleanup kind of thing, aesthetics, but the tank is gone. It's no longer here, so we're glad to have that happen. Also, in regards to utilities, the sewer rehabilitation project for TCUD 2 is about 99% complete. It's our plans at your July council meeting to bring a detailed report of the work accomplished and the money spent on that. So definitely glad to have that behind us. While I'm on TCUD, I'd like to congratulate Antonio Marturo. He's basically our assistant utilities director. While working full-time and taking care of his family, he has put himself back through school and just recently received his bachelor's degree in business management. Having done that through grad school, I know what I got a good idea of what he went through and what an undertaking that was for him. So, congratulations to him. We're very excited for him on his accomplishment. Department heads are currently working on budgets for next fiscal year. Council, we have slated July 31st as a budget workshop with you folks. If we could get that on your calendars. Sylvia will be sending out an email reminder of that date and time later on this week. And I will be out of the office from Wednesday afternoon until Saturday morning for the city managers conference, but I will be available via text, email, phone calls. Just wanted you to be aware if you stop by City Hall and don't find me, I'm at a conference. So, and that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Charlie. Council have any questions for Charlie? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 8, which is the public comments. Are there any further public comments? Being none, close public comments. Item number 9, council comments. Ryan, you want to start us off?
I'll go quick. You had mentioned last month about crosswalks and pedestrians having the right of way. And I had a neighbor who's an engineer with Kimley Horn that brought that to my attention. And Amy had mentioned she could possibly email you some suggestions just as far as for lighting. And, I mean, we see accidents all the time on TK Drive from cars stopping or not paying attention or teens texting or whatever it may be. But some of those crosswalks are a little dangerous to go across. And so if there's something that the city could do to ensure the safety of its citizens, whether it's lighting, signage, I don't know the answer. But my friend she said she would give some suggestions because it's things she's done in the past with, 4-lane roads and non-intersection crosswalks, things of that sort. So maybe it could help out just because it's a little nuts out there, depending on the time of day with people wanting to cross. Because you got those that'll stop and wait till there's no cars, and the others that are like, I have the right of way.
Dog's going.
I'm going right across. So if we could do something there, possibly, without spending a ton of money, but to improve the safety of those crosswalks because it seems to be getting worse and worse with the increase in traffic and increase in pedestrians with the summer months. That's it.
That's it?
Yep.
Jen?
I just wanted to, on behalf of the Beautification Committee, we wanted to publicly say that we are very grateful for the Women's Club $500 donation. It's going to go a long way. And also the TK Veterans Association, their $500 as well. All of it will be spent to the Living Memorial Gardens. And since it's volunteers up there, it really does go a long ways. The next group work day is June 27th at 8 a.m. So we start early so that it's not as hot. But we have individual work days, so you're more than welcome to let us know when you're available, and I'll tell you which weeds to pull.
Excellent. Thanks, Jen. Dottie?
I guess because we're gonna be having a budget workshop and there was some consternation this evening about the T-cut budget, we might want to, make sure that when we're working the budgets and preparing that we're doing a solid job of coming to council and talking about, the basis for changes and, that we're not just looking at, well, this has been our history and therefore that's why we've given you this number with a 5% increase or something. I mean, just make sure or reinforce with the department heads that they should really be thinking ahead about, and I know you absolutely can't anticipate everything that will or could happen, but we do have some smarts based on history and people know about things that might be coming up. And so to really use your head and everybody use their collective heads. And it shouldn't be to be a wish list that said, if there was an endless pot of money, I'd like these 10 things. Let's really talk about what are the needs, what are the upcoming things, the challenges that they have, and then try to base our budget a little bit more on that. And again, I know it's not a perfect system. Many of us in business know that things happen, but it will help. And even without that, Charlie, if I could, when you do bring changes like the one that you did bring up tonight, it would be good to get detail for those line items that are changing with some kind of an explanation of what happened or didn't happen that makes us better or worse off. Probably make it a little bit smoother process going forward. That's it for me.
Thank you, Dottie. David?
Well, I'd like to thank everybody who came out to the Veterans 5K run. It was a success. It wasn't as big as last year because we had a little competition with the Jimmy Johnson Foundation did either a 5 or a 10K run the very next day, and so I think everybody was saving up their energy for that. So
It was really hot too, wasn't it?
It was hot. So we were down about 16, 18 runners from last year, but our sponsors really came through for us, so we were able to send our $2,500 donation to the Fisher House, and as Jen said, to the $500 to the Beautification Committee. I'd like to thank John Weinbrenner over there for letting us use his facilities. He doesn't charge the veterans anything, and Sonic Rewind played for free, so it was a really good day. Really observed the day, making it very special. And then we had the Memorial Day service. It's getting bigger and bigger every year. Chief, that flag is awesome. I hear more stuff about that flag than anything. Everybody loves the flag, and we had a special guy from Tega, Dave Wallace is a double amputee. He was recognized. He's he's going to march in the 4th of July parade. He's going to be in the color guard. He's going to go all 3 miles, and he's got prosthetics. So when you see you people watching at home, when you see the flag go by, it is proper to stand and put your hand over your heart when the flag goes by. A lot of people just sit there in their chair and wave at us, but when the colors go by, it's proper to stand and pay your respects to the flag. And Dave Wallace sure has given a lot. I think he's also going to be recognized in the Fort Mill Times. They're doing a story on him now. They saw him out there and they were wondering. He's been a Fort Mill or a TK resident for a long time. His kids all went through the Fort Mill School District, so he's kind of been quiet for the last couple of years, and we kind of brought him out of his shell. He's got quite a story to tell. I think that's all I got. Thank you.
A couple things. Election day tomorrow. Yes, we're doing it again. Go to the polls, 7 to 7. Some of the poll places have changed, so check where you're supposed to go. So just I guess if you go on the York County Board of Elections website, they'll tell you where you're supposed to go, or call York County Board of Elections. They'll tell you what to do. So that's number one. Number
Check
two is July 4th, as we all know, is a huge day for the city of Tega. There will be the land parade, which starts up at 9 a.m. So if you have a contractor coming to do work on your house, please be advised that Tega Drive will be closing at about 8:45, 8:50, and will not reopen until we have the last parade participant going through. There will be trolleys again this year, picking up at the Glennon Center, Rundy Park, and Tega Elementary School. Canoe joust down at Windjammer. Boat parade, which starts at Nivens Creek at 11 o'clock, will make its way around to the peninsula to Windjammer. And then the Carolina Show ski team will perform at 1 o'clock. After that, head up to the Glennon Center for the Splish Splash of Fun at 3 o'clock. And then to take care of that hangry attitude you're going to have, because you're going to be doing all of these things, the TK Lions Club will be having their annual fish fry. And if you want tickets to the annual fish fry, you can contact Sue Gulaski, Leisure Lady Sue Gulaski, and you're still autospec at comporium.net, or Tom Goebel at City Hall. He'll also have some tickets, so feel free to get in touch with one of those two people or any other lion that you know for tickets for the fish fry. This is our 35th anniversary as a city, which is kind of neat. Next, I have put out on my social media page the request for help in regards to the feasibility study, which is going on at RFATS right now, which is part of the 2045 LRP long-term plan update. This idea was defeated once before in 2012, but as we all know, elections have consequences, and some of those people who helped defeat this in 2012 are no longer part of the policy committee. To date, we had to do this study for a third bridge, and that third bridge is going to come over from Rock Hill into the Sutton Road area, currently where it's planned, and that was defeated because Sutton Road can't handle that kind of traffic. We can't handle that kind of traffic up here. And what the city of Rock Hill wants to do is alleviate some of that traffic that they got on I-77 before it comes to us. So the cost of that study is $250,000 of your money to do the study, and we've currently spent $55,000 on it. And in 2012, Representative Norman and myself, then Mayor Danny Funderburk, Britt Blackwell, Michael Johnson, the chief of the Catawba Nation, all voted down moving forward on this. Since, as I said, elections have consequences, some of those people have changed. Rock Hill seems to have gotten the shift on the policy committee so that they can move forward on this project of $250,000 to spend to decide whether or not we need a third bridge. Do we need a way of alleviating some of the traffic on I-77? Yes, we do. Do I think a bridge is the answer to doing that? No, I do not. I ask you If you are available, the RFATS meeting is on Friday at 12 o'clock at the Operations Center down in Rock Hill, which I think is 757 South Anderson Road. I think that's what it is. If it's not, get a message to me and I will get you the exact address. I encourage you to come to that and voice your opinion. I'm hoping that we can stop this again because it's insanity. So, and if you can't be there, please feel free to contact our state senator, Wes Clymer, and tell him what you think about his supporting of this idea for the third bridge study. Because he feels that we should study it, but he doesn't, he represents us as well, not only Rock Hill. I think I covered everything I needed to cover. Item number 10 on the agenda. Council entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Motion by Dottie Hersey. Do I have a second? Second by David O'Neill. Anybody want to stay? All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. We're adjourned.